know the country need a change, but it starts with us. Though a full time we unite and stand as one. Out of many, one people.
Every day, another you die. Crime rate gone to the sky. Politician, them a tell bare lies. Them a tell bare lies. Work now run, we can't get a blind. Get the people, can't get a blind. Rice raised, but the food have a buy. Stop on the guns, the youth them rely.
The leaders just a chillin' at the mansions and a chill poor people with sanctions. Price raised but them still have a tax man. Get a youth need a chance for relax man. The country just designed for the Tories, while the residents them are the poorest. In a city youths them malnourished. Me never see a yard man from the foreplace. Every day another youth die. Another youth die, oh why? Politicians, them a tell bare lie. Them a tell bare lie. They don't wanna see us prosper. They don't wanna see us try. They clip a wing, they no want we fly. They don't wanna see us fly.
Babies are have babies. The human traffic, them kidnap the ladies. We get the vote, them top or changes. Then use the same policies from the 80s. Babylon to stop harass the vendors. The churches are some big, big pretenders. Me get a loan, but the profit when me make come back in all the interest to the lender. Every day, another you die. Crime rate gone to the sky. Politician, them a tell bare lies. Them a tell bare lies. Work now run, we can't get a blind. Get the people, can't get a blind. Rice raised, but the food have a buy. Stop on the guns, the youth them rely.
Get a youth want fly with the visa and take some trips to Ibiza. Meet some girl pretty like Lisa. Hannah, them can't solve murder but quickly stop scammer.
Them a blame crime rate on the music, but for win election, them use it. Them a use politics, may we prove it. Jam done can change if we choose it. Every day, another you die. Another you die, oh why? Politicians, them a tell bare lie. Them a tell bare lies. They don't wanna see us prosper. They don't wanna see us try. Them clip a wing, them no want if we fly. They don't wanna see us fly.
I am the first, I am the last, I am the beginning and the ending. And him say be telling you, him say his signs are near. Look to Jesus.
Hello, good night, and welcome to another edition of UIC Liberty TV. This is Joseph Patterson. Warm welcome to all of you who are joining us tonight. This is, what do you call it now? Day number 5 on Kwanzaa. Quite the new tradition for us here in Jamaica to contemplate, celebrating something that we're not used to. We're all used to the Christmas and New Year thing, but now we are getting acquainted with Kwanzaa, a very important Afrocentric holiday, if you will, which begins the 26th of December and runs until January 1st. So today is day 5 in our discourse, where we're looking at the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. So we're going to look at the 5th principle. So welcome, good to see you on, Dorrit and Ennis and Lenworth Duffus. Welcome to the learning station, if you will, the education party, where tonight we're going to be talking about what might appear to be a very simple topic. Very simple topic, productivity. Principle 5 of Kwanzaa is called purpose. And the UIC has narrowed that statement to be more focused on productivity. So to kick things off, please make sure you like, share, and comment on the live. And of course, get all your family and friends to connect with us. Good night, Kirk. Good to see you on. Greetings, Donovan Violet. always nice to have you on as well. So yes, so we're going to be talking about the day 5 principle of purpose. Day 1 was about unity, where we learned the focus must be on securing our individual liberty. It might seem so simply, individual liberty, what is that? So day 1, we talked about unity, and we say that you don't just talk about unity. You've always heard, we Africans, we Jamaicans need to unite, but unite around what? Unite to do what? What does it mean to unite? Well, the first thing we needed to do in our unity effort is to make sure we secure our freedom, because without freedom, you can't do anything else. Day 2 looked at individual liberty in detail, where we learned that without this, we cannot achieve any of our other objectives, nor can we be a strong collective if we have not secured our individual liberty. And then we went on to look at principle number 3 on day 3, which is personal responsibility. Here we learned that individual liberty comes with a personal responsibility to take deliberate action to secure our freedom and our future. And of course, that involves us having good governance. As we saw on day 4 last night, how important good governance is to having a prosperous society. And a part of good governance in a free society is to have a free market, a free and fair economy. And so we learned that we cannot have true freedom or individual liberty without a truly free market economy. And now tonight, we're going to look at productivity, because you cannot have a successful economy. You cannot have a successful country which is not productive. So we as a people must aim to be more productive than anyone else on the planet. Did you know that Singapore is the second most productive country in the world? I mean, by now you should be tired of hearing me talk about Singapore so often, but I can't help it, because for me, you want to understand who is doing something very well, and then you want to make sure that they become your minimum benchmark. You must compare yourself with others. If you're an athlete, you have to look at who is the fastest athlete on the track. Then you have to study him or her and see, why is it that this athlete is faster than me? If you're in business, you must look at your industry and look at who is the leader in your industry, whatever that industry is. And so why is it that they are the leader in the industry? What is it that they're doing right? And you want to find out what that is, and you want to copy it, and you want to improve upon it. Yeah? You want to look for opportunities, how you can improve your performance relative to those in your industry. That is very important. And so tonight, we pause to acknowledge the greatness of Singapore again. They're leading on so many indicators, and this is yet one more indicator in which they're leading. And as you learned last night, Singapore was a colony just like us, a colony of Great Britain, a poor, miserable, dirty, dingy colony. Today they have about 6 million people living in the space of about St. Thomas. And they are, in terms of productivity, ahead of the US, the UK, Canada, and in fact, they're ahead of every country in the world except one. Only one country is more productive than Singapore. So let me show you let me see if I can find this for you, a graph that's going to show you where Singapore sits in terms of productivity. Can I find it? Here it is, the most productive countries. Can you see that? Yeah. So in this graph, you will be seeing on your screen now, it shows you countries by productivity. And if you look here, Luxembourg is the top country with a productivity of 134,000 international dollars per GDP. International dollars is just another way of expressing the dollar value of the country's output. Normally we see it in US dollars, but here they concoct something to, kind of make all the dollars across countries comparable. And so this is the international dollars, a fictitious dollar that, kind of takes all the different currencies and find the variations and come up with a number. So this is the number, Luxembourg being number one. But look at little Singapore, little Singapore right there with 116,486 international dollars of GDP per citizen. Now, if you look down the list here, see other countries. Let's look for some familiar countries we know. Cayman is at 72,000. Let's find the one. US, just Cayman. US is below Cayman. Can you imagine that? US is 69,000. Remember, Singapore is 116,000. The US is at 69,000 per citizen. If you scroll down a bit to Canada, another country that many of us migrate to, they're at 52,000. You scroll down to, say, where's the UK? Can I find the UK? Here's the UK, it's right here. The UK is at 49,000. Where's Jamaica? Jamaica is not even on the chart. Jamaica is not even on the chart. Let me show you where Jamaica is on the map. Can I find, there's a map somewhere up here. Here's the map. So this is the map. And the Jamaica is right here, that tiny dot right here. Can you see it? That tiny dot. So when you hover on that dot, it shows the number. Can I get it to show the number? Here's Jamaica. You see Jamaica at the bottom there? Jamaica's GDP per capita in terms of international dollars is $10,025. $10,025 compared to Singapore's 116,000. Yeah. So Singapore is at 11 times Jamaica. 11 times Jamaica. That's Singapore for you. Can you see it clearly? Let me big it up for you. I hope I can probably increase the size of the screen here so you can see. Singapore. Jamaica is not even on this chart. Now, I'm not sharing this with you to belittle Jamaica. I'm sharing this with you because it's important that we understand what's going on here. M&M says Singapore take all of Manly Plan and use it there. I can't agree with you, Hudson. That's not true. If Singapore took all of Manly's plan and implemented that in their country, I can assure you that we'll be talking about some very different numbers today. Manly's plan did not include a truly free and fair market economy. I can assure you of that. That was not the plan. I'm being honest, being very, very honest. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend. Singapore was very smart, very wise. And so they went about being quite pragmatic. They understood something that much of the world didn't understand at the time, because they're a really smart leader. It's only today, when I say today, I mean in recent years, that some of the countries are beginning, like Rwanda is now seeing, wait a minute, that this we should do. And China, about 20 years ago, pick up on it and said, we need to do this. And so China adopted some of Singapore's. So it's the other way around. It's not Singapore copying anything from Jamaica. It's what we needed to and still need to copy from Singapore today. So our productivity is very low because we have not been doing some basic things that we should have. Now, productivity is driven by the system of governance you have in place. If you have a bad system of governance in place, your productivity as a country will go down because your productivity of your people goes down. So if you notice, when a Jamaican leaves Jamaica and go abroad to a country that has a better or more improved system of governance, where there is less corruption in their system, still corruption, but less corruption, where the people are better trained and educated, where the government services are more efficient, where the public infrastructure is more up to par. You notice when the very unproductive or low productive Jamaican leave here and goes to any of those countries, our individual productivity immediately goes through the roof. Did you realize that? The moment they drop us into another country where they are doing a better job, you see that immediately our productivity level rises in that other country. And so we have to be very honest and very focused on what we need to do now to raise our productivity level as a country, as an individual, as a community, as a company or organization, so that we can get better results. I'm going to show you a video now where some of our PSOJ or private sector people and the media were discussing the issue of productivity in Jamaica. And in that video, you're going to see much of what I've been talking about for some time coming out in the discourse of that video. So I'm going to call that up for you now so you can have a look, we'll have a listen, and we'll talk about what we are hearing and seeing. Hold on a second. I need to get the right video. Let's see if I can do that again. We're going to talk about, improving productivity in Jamaica. So that's what we're going to talk about here. And it will be quite informative to listen to what they're saying and follow along and see how much of what I've been talking about is what they're now complaining about, even though some of them actually sit in the seat where they could have influenced the outcome in one way or another. Let's listen.
Welcome back to our next program. Thank you for staying with us. Well, the government recently outlined its intention to develop a national policy for productivity, which will set the foundation for the country to have a productivity-centered workforce, where goods and services will be produced in keeping with international standards. This announcement coincides with the expressed frustration by the Economic Growth Council, as it points to the lack of measured performance as one of the barriers to achieving 5% growth in 4 years. To discuss this more, we're joined by Lloyd Distant, the president of the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce, and John Mahfoud, the managing director of Jamaica Teas. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here.
Good evening. Good evening.
Growth has been a challenge for us. We had this ambitious target, 5 in 4. We haven't been able to hit it yet. And the Growth Council tells us lots of things that are standing in the way. Do you accept what they're saying? There is this issue of permanent secretaries holding people accountable in government, etc., etc., etc. Let's start with you, Lloyd.
Okay. So I think accountability is a component of it. I mean, I do start off with the statement and in full agreement that lack of productivity has been one of the fundamental issues that has been retarding Jamaica's ability to get sustainable economic growth. But there are a myriad of things that are behind that, and there are some responsibilities that we as the private sector have, and there are some responsibilities that we believe the government has as well. We know that some businesses and institutions in Jamaica have achieved world-class productivity. I mean, some of the things that we see taking place in the improvements in and the investments taking place at companies like Wysinco, Grace, Jamaica Teas, and, you know, Free Farm Factory that have gone through some work, not only in terms of investments, but working along with the Jamaica Productivity Center. We know that ability to achieve it is there.
So Jamaica Teas has been one of the productivity successes. Is that right, Mr. Muffle?
Well, I thank Lloyd for that compliment, but I'm not sure. We are so small, you know. But what I would like to say something. I'd say that back when the government announced the establishment of the Economic Growth Council, remember we were under serious IMF constraints. We have to also recognize that Jamaica is a very, very small island nation with not very much natural resources or manufacturing or agricultural base.
Okay, so there I have to cut him. I have to stop right there and make it very clear that this has nothing to do with our size whatsoever. You hear what he's saying? That Jamaica is very small. We don't have, you know, enough natural resources. But remember, Singapore is 15 times, Singapore is 1/15 the size of Jamaica. We're 15 times bigger than Singapore physically. And Singapore has more than twice the amount of people that it has in its country. And Singapore has not even 1% of the resources we have in Jamaica, and yet they are a leading country on almost every metrics. So do not be misled by this argument that we are so small and don't have the resources. The only issue we have in Jamaica, or the only two issues we have in Jamaica, is leadership, lack of leadership, and lack of good governance. And because we're missing those two things, then we can now identify all the disadvantages that we have and use them as excuses for failure. So that's his first mistake. However, he's going to later on almost backtrack and start to focus on what the real problem is. So let's continue to watch.
So it was always going to be very, very difficult to achieve the target of 5% growth in 4 years.
What he's talking about there, the 5% growth, is the promise that Andrew Holness made to us. He told us that if we elected him, he was going to generate 5% growth in the first 4 years of his administration. Of course, up until now, he has still not been able to generate 5% growth, except that after they demolished the Jamaican economy in 2020, 2021, during the pandemic issue by locking down the economy. And this was a global phenomenon, by the way. So there was a plan to do that globally. And of course, our government was very active in helping that global agenda to decimate our economy. And then having pushed the economy way down, and then the economy is coming back to the normal stagnant position that it's in, they will now talk about growth. But that's a fake growth, because it's simply you cutting my salary or firing me and then hiring me back and then tell me that I have grown from my zero salary to something where I was before. So it's really disingenuous, but I wanted you to remember that that's the promise we were given, similar to the promise of being able to sleep with our windows and doors open, because he was going to fix the crime problem. And he has not been able to either fix crime or fix the economy. Let's continue.
But I think if both the Economic Growth Council and the Prime Minister had laid out to the country the road that was going to take us to that, is the 5 and 4, and constantly updated us and told us where we were doing well, where we were not doing well, what were the impediments, then you could
Isn't that what they're doing? Isn't that what Michael Lee changed?
No, you can't do that 3 years down the road and blame the permanent secretaries. It's much, much bigger than that.
Excellent point here. Excellent point. So after they had the fanfare, the big fanfare where they had a big stage and wonderful speeches and grander displays and how they're going to transform Jamaica and they're going to fix everything, 3 years later, Michael Leachin and company, including the president, finance minister, come back and start to blame everybody else for their failures. They were not able to deliver the growth that they spoke about. They were not able to reform government the way they claimed they would have, and then they start to blame everybody else for it. But what is clear is that they neither have the competence nor the vision to be able to deliver on any of the promises that they make. And so they'll always be passing the buck and blaming somebody else for it.
So I would have said, along the way, take the Jamaican
They didn't do it right.
population.
That's what you're saying.
They should have taken the Jamaican population with them and got rid of those problems way, way long ago, and not just put it on the permanent secretaries. They report to members of parliament and ministers.
Gentlemen,
they haven't mentioned those problems.
We've covered that, but within this conversation of productivity, on a personal level, with your own projects, your own companies, what hindrances do you see on a daily basis to productivity? We'll start with you, sir.
Yeah. So there are myriad of things that we need to fix.
Pinpoint, exactly.
Yeah, so an example would be the transport system. Mm-hmm. Right? So employees coming to work, we, in fact, recently in one of the businesses I'm involved in, had a conversation with all of our employees about business starts at 9, or customers expect us to be there at 9. So if you're not arriving there and you're opening up a retail establishment at 9:15, 9:30, you're not only affecting the productivity of our organization, you're affecting the productivity of our customers who are coming. So the transport system is one clear example. Public sector transformation, we talk about it, but we've not fully achieved, we've not achieved much in terms of public sector transformation. That's a major issue in terms of impact on productivity for many of us in the workplace.
Just movement of human capital from point A to point B.
So the movement of human capital is one component of it. The ability to get your business done in the time that you may have allotted that is reasonable to get it done. So sitting in a tax office for half a day or sending somebody to sit in a tax office for half a day is not productive use of the time of our employees.
So far, everything you're saying is perfectly correct, right? I mean, our public transportation system sucks. Our government services suck. And so because of all of that, our lives are very difficult and we become very unproductive. But here's the funny thing. These same guys are the ones who continue to fund the two parties to continue to do this to us. Amazing.
Those kinds of examples are certainly put on the table.
I think that one evidence, if we were doing it right, would have been to significantly move Jamaica on the doing business report from 70 down to 1. If all the government did was improve the doing business, the ease of doing business in Jamaica, everything else would flow. For instance, I told somebody today, I want to have a Christmas party at my office. I have to go to 3 places, physically go to the police station, go to the tax office, and go to JCAP. That could all be done online. Productivity in the public sector, doing business, making it easier, would make a very, very large difference in Jamaica.
Absolutely, 100% correct here again. And why can't this be done? Why is it that we can't do business easily? Well, because our government is much bigger than it needs to be, and they do a lot of make work projects. So they create a lot of opportunities to hire people through nepotism and give them a government job, as opposed to building a lean and efficient government and push the rest of us to go and do productive work. Instead, the government continues to expand, getting larger and larger, but less and less efficient, burdening us with more and more taxes, more and more laborious things to do in order to get our business done, as opposed to trying to make our lives as efficient and effective as possible. And therein lies the problem.
Gentlemen, let me just tell you what Brian Winter, a former BOJ governor, said about productivity. He pointed out that it's been decreasing over the last decade in Jamaica, up 2% a year. And he said that the factors, he had 4 factors: the quality of the labor force, high levels of crime, fiscal distortions, and poor work ethic. how are we going to fix all those four? Because usually when we talk about productivity, we'll talk about work ethic. We haven't really addressed the issue of the poor labor quality. People coming to work untrained. On-the-job training is nothing to talk about in this country. How are we going to fix those to get the productivity up?
This is the torch you use if you want to become barefoot. This night, buddy.
So there's no question that education is the medium to long-term objective of what we need to achieve. I believe that there's some short and medium-term things that we should start looking at. So one of the things he mentioned is around the fiscal space that we have. So as businesses invest in technology, because technology and innovation certainly is one of those areas that we have not done well in. But to take advantage of technology investments, you need an educated workforce. Well, maybe you can get beyond some of it by start implementing some training activities. So education is a major component, how we actually bring our people up and how we actually transition, how our workforce operates within the workplace is going to be certainly something we need to achieve.
Mr. Moffitt?
You know, I think that when I look at my small company, you know, we have rules and we stick to those rules for our employees, what they have to do, how they must perform, what time they get to work and what time they leave. It is not, it is not, you know, it's not so complicated. So when people say that Jamaican workers are not productive or they lack good work ethics, those things I don't think are fundamental to our problem.
So I think it's also a matter on the business end as well, not enforcing.
Well, maybe that's the case. Maybe the general culture is one of, you know, we'll soon come. I know that. I know that when I deal with my customers abroad, and they tell me about the experiences they have with Jamaican manufacturers who export. They say it's a very, very poor show, that it's a very, very poor service that they receive from Jamaican exporters in terms of on-time delivery, quality of service, so, you know, it's a general culture thing, but I think we have to start somewhere, and that somewhere to me is this long-awaited increased productivity in what is the government have under their control, which is the technology that they need to bring to the table to remove the obstacles from doing business.
Well, to touch on that, as my colleague was saying about education, you have seen the report about with the JTA's opposition to the whole STEM school system. Do you think that he has a valid point, or do you think that the system needs to be inherently changed to encourage productivity to get a better educated workforce? How would you respond to that?
So, to me first. So I believe STEM is absolutely important in transitioning the coming workforce's mind to what is needed for the future. So we've got to be thinking about jobs of the future, and STEM is an important component of that. Our critical thinking skills and then how we interact with technology for the improvement of productivity in the country, I believe is going to be very important. But as you went on that, and as John was speaking a while ago, one of the things that popped back to my mind was a statement that was made about productivity. And if we could solve this, say poor customer service is a component of it, but poor management and poor employee attitude, those are some fundamental things. It's a culture. John mentioned third culture. We've got to get beyond that. And how we transition as business leaders, and how we take examples of those people who have done it well. And again, you know, if I use a Grace Kennedy as an example, very recently, Douglas O'Rain, an article came out written by Douglas O'Rain on his disappointment in himself, because some of those successes that he has seen in the businesses he has been involved in, either on the boards or in Grace Kennedy itself, he has not literally taken those successes and really been able to translate it to Jamaica, to the wider Jamaica. So those are some of the things that we as business people need to take a responsibility for.
Mr. Mahfood?
we had an employee leave us and go, you know, he wasn't a very good employee, but he left us and he went to New York, and he got himself involved in a different type of work environment, one that is structured, one that has all the rules and regulations, and he conforms, because you're either in it and you work according to the rules, or you lose your job. That's not the culture we have in Jamaica. And so, but the way to start it is to start at the top, which is the Prime Minister, which is setting the goals of the economic,
just to circle back a bit.
And set it somewhere and say, listen, I am the example of how we're going to do this, and I want you guys to follow.
Yeah, but you talk about your employee. It had nothing to do with the government. It's just a system that the business is set up. Why aren't you saying businesses must lead this?
You can't point around the place and say a business should lead it and so on.
Well, PSOJ, we have all these business organizations. What are you doing? What are you discussing? Aren't you discussing how to run profitable businesses? How to get productivity up, how to grow?
So we have, and the PSOJ, Jamie, and ourselves have actually working along with an entity called ACORN. We worked with the IADB to get some additional research, and we have another component of that taking place. So we've had some research done. We've actually had, in 2018, there was actually a session that we had along with the IADB speaking about productivity, and the term I would use is trying to reawaken the mind around the things that we as business leaders need to do to transition where we are. Don't take away, I agree with John, there is a responsibility on the government and public sector that also needs to be able to feed into that. I don't leave it all on them, because we as the business community, it's about leadership, and we have got to instill that. Because, as I said, there's some businesses that have a world-class capability.
That we hear is coming. What do you want to see in it, John?
I want to just say one more thing. And, you know, if we are blaming each other, you know, whether we're blaming business people or employees, if we had an environment that made Jamaica #1 in doing business, you would be able to invite other people from overseas who would want to come here because it's a great place to work, and they would bring their ethics and their work models and so on. So we need to create an environment that people want to come here and set up businesses. And you start off by making it easy to do business.
So we can't build this here. We can't build that culture here. Is that what you're saying?
We build it by having examples of good cultures. You know, there are good
Will this
companies.
policy help to build that? Is that what you're looking for?
So before I spend a lot of time on the policy, if the government would resource the Jamaica Productivity Center, it's just even start off from there. So as much as putting a policy in place and sitting on the competitiveness committee, they've now pulled out productivity to say we're going to have a focus around the policy and the things that we need to get there. I think those are good things to do. I believe, but I've also seen where the Jamaica Productivity Center has had great success in a number of businesses going in and supporting and helping them to transition.
So you'd prefer more focus on the productivity center?
I do believe that if the government starts off by adequately resourcing the productivity center, we can make a big difference.
We've been going back and forth, whose fault, who's not fault, culture.
This is not a fault thing, though. Sorry, continue.
As Mr. Mahfoud was saying, the blame game. What do you propose? Do you have anything proposed to move forward? Because there's been papers written, white letters, bills have been tabled, everyone's come forward. What is there that can actually be done right now, realistically, to move forward with productivity from the bottom up?
You keep on glossing over the most important thing, which is the efficiency of the government bureaucracy. If you don't fix that problem, we're going to continue to talk about little bits here, little bits there. That's the responsibility of the government to make business efficient and to make life easier for the people. Start with the government, public sector, and make it the most efficient.
How does the public sector then push government? Is the public sector in a position to push government?
No, the government must push the public sector. The government have been elected by the people to make Jamaica a better place to live. They must ensure that the things they say they're going to do, which is the public sector efficiency, which is introducing technology, do those things.
Well said. That's exactly the point that should be made. that the government needs to make sure it is running its house properly and demonstrate by example that it is able to be efficient and effective at delivering the services for which it has been paid. But over and over, the government of Jamaica continues to waste and lose billions of dollars while the Jamaican people suffer poor customer service across every single sector of government. Very inefficient, bad service, not getting value for money from what we pay for and what we end up getting, and losing billions through corruption, nepotism, and all kinds of fraudulent activities. And so what Mr. Mahfood is saying here is 100% correct. What amazes me is that they can say these things on public television, but they continue to pay the government or fund the two political parties to continue what he's now pointing out as, and rightly pointing out as wrong. Why do they continue to fund these two parties to do that to us if they're able to so eloquently articulate the problem? That's what I'd like to know.
I think you can't lose sight of the fact that the public sector falls under the aegis of the government, so we can't look at it separately. So again, for the public sector to transform, there are things that the government has got to do and got to mandate.
Do we need a new government then?
I don't know that's the answer. I mean, this is not something that has just happened. No, this is something that we've been tracking over quite a few years. And if you look at the studies that have been done, they've said from the 70s, consistently we've been declining somewhere in the region of about 1.5%. So that is not a change of government thing. I'm not one of those persons that go down that path at all. What I've continued to say is we all have a responsibility. So we're not.
So what he really should be saying here, and this is really important, what he should be saying here, if you hear what he said a while ago, he's saying we have consistently been declining in productivity. You've heard me say that a million times. You see the evidence of our decline in the value of our currency. Your currency is going to be a perfect reflection of your nation's productivity. And so we have been declining year after year after year. We're at a point now where our students are boasting about being dunce. It's so bad. It's very hard now to find. It's not that we don't have physical bodies here in Jamaica. There are people walking around here in Jamaica, many of them like zombies, that you're unable to employ them. They're not employable. If you do employ them, it's a lot of work. They're very, it's high maintenance, requiring a lot of supervision and so on. And so what the gentleman just said a while ago is that it's not a change of government that we need. And what he means by that is switching between the two parties is not the answer, because you're going to get the same result no matter. He said that, indirectly without realizing what he was saying. That no matter which of the two we elect, the results are going to be the same, because it doesn't matter. They both give you the same decline in productivity over time. Now, what they should be doing then is saying, wait a minute, if we're observing this kind of poor performance, then we need something more significant than swapping those two parties. And so we need to talk about that somewhat. M&M Hudson says, Mr. Patterson, because they don't care about the people, only about the monetary gains. They have the leader in their back pockets. So true. So continuing along with our discourse here, as I said before, productivity is driven by the system of governance. And so we're seeing the problems we're having because we have a bad system. One of the results of that bad system is a failed education system. Many of our students, and this is a serious matter, some of us who grew up in Kingston and probably went to some of the more effective high schools where it's a little bit more effective, like the Immaculates or the Woolmers or so on. But that's not the full constitution of Jamaica. there are many schools across Jamaica, and the vast majority of those schools are under-resourced, poorly staffed, and results in terrible outcome. So students are graduating from high school who cannot read properly, who can't write properly, who can't reason properly, who can't analyze properly, who can't compute properly, who can't measure properly, who do not have the appropriate social skills learned by the time they have finished some 16 years of school. 16 years of school, did I get that right? Or 15 years of school. And when they're finished, they don't have the basic competencies to be able to succeed. So because of the failed education system, you have poor quality potential employees and poor quality employees due to their schooling, due to underpaid teachers. This resulted in about 90% of Jamaicans living below the US poverty line. Can you imagine that? 90% of Jamaicans live below the US poverty line. And this drives brain drain, because when people can't find a decent way to live in an environment, they want to escape from it. And so Jamaica, even though we have not been a out and out communist country or out and out dictatorship where you see people moving like droves to get out of those countries to go somewhere, Jamaica has been, supposed to be a democracy, a free country, should be on paper. But a massive amount of us migrate as economic refugees to other countries because of the poor quality outcome that the current governance model gives us. So the confluence of all of this, the bad governance that leads to a failed education system because we have lost so much money to corruption, which results in poor quality employees, massive brain drain, and then overall low productive country. We end up becoming highly dependent on remittances from those who are being more productive overseas. We end up here in Jamaica becoming heavily reliant on remittances from overseas. Mr. Neal says, as a past high school and primary school teacher, I can personally attest to the lack of resources in the classroom, and classes way above the recommended teacher to student ratio. Very stressful, I can imagine. And so this setup that we have in Jamaica has made a large percentage of the Jamaican population unemployed or underemployed in some cases, or at least if they are employed, they're low-wage earners. And so a large percentage of us here in Jamaica is highly dependent on remittances coming from overseas to give us a little something to augment our income or to give us an income. So in many of the inner city communities, those persons wake up from morning to night and don't have a job. Many of them are actually unemployable. They could not function well on the job. You would need to put in some serious remedial measures. And the longer they stay outside of the workforce, the longer they stay outside of having a job to learn basic work ethics and basic employment skills, is the more unemployable they become and become ripe and available for things that are less than what we'd like to have them involved in. Which then leads us to the problem of the high levels of crime. The lack of opportunity and low wages relative to a high cost of living drives up crime and violence. And this is the product of the 78 years of severe bad governance that we have been enduring. So when you couple this problem of bad education with crime, an unsafe environment where you have to lock up your business early, people can't work late comfortably, you further reduce or undermine the productivity of the nation. And they have a spiraling effect of this now, because you're your productivity is lower, your number of businesses and business opportunities are lower, and therefore less opportunities are available, which then serves to create more incentives for a person to engage in criminal activities, not to mention the corruption to make up the difference between your low wage and the standard of living that you want to engage in. So all of this feeds on itself and continues to feed into a decline. So if you talk to most Jamaicans, they would love to leave the country. And so that is the kind of environment that these two parties have created for us over their 78 years in office. Sean Campbell says there's a lack of accountability in Jamaica in all aspects of society, and government is the biggest culprit, of course. Now, remember, your government, is what sets the tone of the country. It's the leadership of the country, and so goes the leadership. So goes the rest of us. For the most part, you have some of us who will have the ability to try to go against the grain, but the avalanche of corruption, the avalanche of lacking in accountability and lacking in performing and so on, eventually affects everybody. It's just like when the place is dirty. The fact that the government doesn't have a proper system of maintaining a clean environment, it incentivizes persons who would have otherwise behaved differently to just not care and just not bother. I was driving from Halfway Tree at the clock heading up to Devon House a few weeks ago. And I saw, I don't know what prompted me, but I was driving and I saw a fellow walking and he was eating something from a box or a bag. And he just ate it and finished and just crush it up in him and just dash it down right there on the side of the road. And I wouldn't normally do this, but I blew him. I honked my horn and I asked him what, and he looked and said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "You just, littered the place." And he said, "No, I'm gonna litter the place. It's like garbage over there." So, and what he's pointing to is that there's so much garbage along the way that in his mind, that's a garbage bin. The road, as it is a garbage bin. And so he was just littering accordingly. Yeah. Yeah. And so this is the way that you get to where you are. So when you have a careless government, a dirty government, a government that isn't leading by example, then that carries into the rest of the society and creates the problems that we see. Now, without productivity increasing, real economic growth will not occur. So no matter how much a prime minister or a leader talks about economic growth, if the actual productivity of the citizens aren't increasing, you cannot have economic growth. You can fudge numbers, you can play around with statistics, you can change the formulas and try to create an on-paper growth. You can borrow money and spend it into the economy and create fake growth for the time being, but you will not have real economic growth. This will only cause the decline in our global competitiveness more and more, and result in the continued fall in our dollar, and result in the continued fall in our purchasing power. So as your productivity growth declines, your dollar will fall and your purchasing power will fall, which is bad news for you if you're trying to save money and invest money for your retirement, because it means that you have to work that much harder. And the truth is, it's impossible to overcome unless you have exceptional financial management skills and investment skills. But for the vast majority of us, it's impossible to overcome all of that. So all of this stems from a government that is too large, too corrupt, and too wasteful. It's diverting much needed funds away from things that would improve our productivity into pure consumption of mostly imported goods. This, of course, digs a deeper hole for us. So it doesn't matter how much money they borrow, well, it does matter in a negative way. So they borrow money, and then they're putting this money into corruption and waste. It's not building our productive capacity, but we have to pay back those debts with interest. And so all that does is to dig a deeper hole for us, and it manifests itself in massive crime statistics. And so this next video that I'm going to show you is going to talk a little bit now about the SOE. So the Prime Minister and his team believes that the best way to solve the problems that I've just outlined is for him to have a series of states of emergencies, one after the other. And then the two parties now play politics with us, play games, which one is not going to vote, give the one vote in the Senate, and then they go around in a circle and a loop. And of course, the whole idea behind that is for the one party to say, see, them a fail, vote for us now, or the other party to say, see, them now cooperate with us to fix the problems, so them if you blame, vote for us again. And the merry-go-round continues. But guess what? We, the people, are going to pay the price for all of that game, all of that plating, all of that dollar house. We will pay for it. We'll pay for it with our lives. We'll pay for it with our pensions. We'll pay for it with our quality of life. We'll pay for it with our children going insane because they can't leave Jamaica and they can't progress in Jamaica. And so you have greater levels of mental degradation, greater levels of insanity, suicide, murders, rapes, all kind of dysfunctional behavior. Because when people feel trapped, they behave in all kind of dysfunctional ways. So let's take a look now at a discussion about the whole SOE mess. And I'll come back to you as to why this SOE thing will never work, no matter how much they try to tell us that's what they need to do. It cannot work. It's impossible for it to work because it's addressing the symptom. It's not addressing the actual problem at hand. And as long as it's not addressing the problem, then we have no hope in sight of the problem being abated.
At November 13, 2022, the murder count in Jamaica was 1,360. It has since increased, but I point to that because 2 days later, that increasing number was part of the reason the government declared several states of emergency. The measure is common in recent time, but this time it got a little more attention as there were loud calls for it to be extended beyond the 14 days. Well, that didn't happen. The opposition voted against it in the Senate. But the government, the opposition, the business sector, citizens, why are we so polar on the use of the measure? That's what we're discussing. Welcome to PTN Plus, where we take our primetime news stories further. Now, to help us break it all down, I'm talking with attorney at law, Clyde Williams. Clyde, welcome.
Blessed love. Always a pleasure to be on TVJ.
All right, I tell you. All right, first of all, we're looking at the SOEs. The Prime Minister pretty much described a state of anarchy, a state on the brink of anarchy when he was declaring the SOEs. Let's hear what he said, how he described it when he declared it in November.
Criminal networks and the criminal organizations are doing their best to incorporate legitimate persons, legitimate public authority into their criminal actions.
Wow, the Prime Minister is saying that the criminals are doing their best to incorporate legitimate persons into their criminal enterprises. Come on, man, seriously. How can he say this with a straight face? He represents a criminal organization. Let's not forget this, people. We have a prime minister and an opposition leader who both represents two criminal organizations. And now they're trying to pretend as if they're legitimate. Crazy.
In other words, they're trying to corrupt the state. Now, when we start to see criminal organizations operating in that way. And they are beginning to transition out of being criminal operatives to trying to influence government policy and outcome.
What a ridiculous statement. Criminals are trying to influence government policy. Our governments of the last 7 to 8 years have been working with criminals. It's a normal part of their operation. They have always worked with criminals to run this country. They have always been working hand in hand with criminals. In fact, that makes them criminals. So the Prime Minister is being quite disingenuous here. But guess what? He's trying to fool those who can be fooled.
We have seen states where this has reached the point where either the state is on the brink of collapse or they have had to take extreme actions.
Now, Clyde, that was the Prime Minister saying state on the brink of collapse, comparing it to other countries where crime is out of control. What do you make of that declaration, the reasons he gave?
All right, let me just go back, just a little context in terms of Jamaica's story with crime. Let me use a figure in 2006, that's 16 years ago. The reported murders 16 years ago in 2006 was 1340. These figures are from the Economic Social Survey of Jamaica, Planning Institute of Jamaica. Now, so that's 2006. In 2005, it was 1674 reported murders. In 2004, 1471. In 2011, 1133. In 2021, 1463. And we're up past 1360. So I want to say initially that for the last 20 odd years in Jamaica, almost 30 years, we have had abnormal serious crime rates. So I can understand the government wanting to deal with the situation in a manner that is consistent with government policy and the rights of individuals. I also want to say very quickly that we are looking at the manifestations and the symptoms rather than the cause, and that's been a problem in Jamaica. In other words, no boy is born a shotter, no boy is born a criminal, no boy is born a rapist, no boy is born a murderer. I'm using men because 98% of murder, serious crimes, just about 98%, are committed by men. So I want to make an initial point. Nobody is born a murderer, a shotter, a killer, a wicked smarty, a dog-heart smarty. So something goes wrong between birth and about mid-teens in Jamaica. Because our data in Jamaica, and I'm using 2021 data from, again, the Economic Social Survey of Jamaica, demonstrates that as early as about mid-teens, so like 13, 14, boys get involved in killings and in shootings. And the large number of persons arrested for serious crime fall in the age range 25 to 34, that's last year, and 35 to 44. Murders were referring to specifically. The age range 25 to 34, 427 persons were arrested for murder, and the age range 35 to 44, 267. So the point I'm making is that something goes wrong in the process of the boys growing up in the country. So by mid-teens, they become murderers and shotters. By the time they get into their productive years in their 20s, they are full-blown murderers and criminals, shotters.
Start a family, because nobody wants to be a vagabond, nobody wants to be a murderer, nobody wants to be a criminal. Something has to trigger that level of hopelessness that says following a path that's prescribed for you by your teachers and by your leaders is going to lead to a decent outcome. If they see where that is viable and reasonable, then they're going to act accordingly. But if they see their teachers struggling, the police officers struggling, their parents struggling, those who graduate before them and did well in their CXCs or whatever, and and they see them going to work and they're still struggling and they can't move up in life, then something is going to trigger in the brain. And if you have seen that going on for the last 30 years, he pointed out, 30 years of abnormal crime statistics, 30 years. Who has been leading us for those 30 years? What have they done differently? And how will SOE change that now? And is it changing it? That's the question.
So the question is, what's going wrong? What we are doing in Jamaica for the last 30 years, we are dealing with on the back end. When it's all gone wrong, we're going to arrest, we're going to lock them up, we're going to put them into detention and so forth.
Addressing
So
the
my first
symptoms and not the
point
cause.
is, absolutely. So we have to first investigate what is going on with our boys. No, it's not nature. We know it's not nature, so it's nurture. It's environment, it's socialization. Are there connecting factors when we look at these numbers? Are these boys primarily in a particular neighborhood, in particular communities, the families, the schools they go? So we need to deal with that. I want to use an example of a flood. No, it no matter how many sandbags they use, at a point in time, if the infrastructure is not sufficient, it is going to flood the place same way. What we've been doing in Jamaica is sandbagging crime. It's not dealing with the cause. That being
It's interesting that you're saying.
So I think we have heard enough. It's very clear that the symptomatic approach, the symptomatic approach, or the trying to address the symptom is not going to bring us the relief that is being promised by the Prime Minister or the other party in waiting, which is hoping that they fail enough that the people vote them in afterwards. So one of the things that is identified as undermining our productivity as well as crime is fiscal distortion. You might have heard that term used in the previous video. Fiscal distortion occurs when the government's interaction in the economy creates distortions that causes the economy not to function as efficiently and effectively as it should. So this normally occurs when you have government mismanagement of the economy and or resources. So you have a misallocation of resources. So funds are flowing to the wrong things, and things that should get funds are not getting it. And so over time, that erodes the infrastructure. That's like what he just mentioned, you can't keep putting sandbags on. The SOE is another sandbag. So the infrastructure is weak. The infrastructure of our social infrastructure or economic infrastructure is terribly weak. And the Prime Minister is trying to sandbag it. Now, what the sandbag does, it's a feel-good measure for the most part. It makes those looking on who don't have enough sense of reasoning to say, oh yeah man, he's doing something. And when he sends out the police in their numbers and call it a state of emergency and stop and search anybody and so on, in those areas of states of emergency, you get a temporary reprieve. You will have moments where there's a lull in crime in that area or that area or that area. And during that process, the criminals shift their operations around the country. And gradually, because of these SOEs, the frequencies of them and how they're used, these criminals from, let's say, Kingston, they move to, let's say, Manchester, Mandeville, and they get used to that area and learn how to set up shop. And then you do something over here and they move to, say, St. Anne, and they learn to set up shop there. And they move. So every time you're moving them around the country, they're really setting up new satellite offices, new networks. Now, the Prime Minister is telling us in his comments that they're becoming even more and more sophisticated in their efforts at building their criminal enterprise. And what he's trying to do is to shock us into fear, to say we need to give him more of a free hand to pursue his draconian measures. And so he wants us to get really comfortable with the idea that we need to give up more and more of our legitimate rights in order for him to address the problem which he and the other party has created for us. And so if we want that, then we can vote for more of it. But I can assure you that it's a very slippery slope and one which will not end well. We've seen it before in history. You look at other countries that have tried the same approach, and it only resulted in them losing their rights but not gaining any security, right? So the fiscal distortions now that we're talking about manifests itself in an economy which is not working effectively. So take one of the fiscal misalignments. This might shock you. We spend about 200 million on a useless governor general. That's just one example of waste that we have in government. And there are many more like these. You look at all the number of boards. They have all these boards that are not functioning, but persons are sitting on those boards and taking taxpayers' money each and every month. And so it's draining the productive sector. So those people who really are working for a living, who are doing things that are adding value to our society, they have to pay the taxes to fund all of these waste. On top of that, as we said before, you have the poor work ethics, where a lot of our graduates from school, whether it's at the secondary level or many of our post-secondary levels, still have severe work ethics issues. But we notice that when they go abroad, they are able to do better, as Mr. Mahfoud pointed out. They learn quickly in a different system. So it tells us that as soon as the UIC gets in and we start to transform the system, you're going to see a change in behavior of our people, and our productivity is going to go up. Take, for example, our public transportation system. The current design causes a lot of lateness. So all around you have people being late for work, late for this, late for that, late for that. The fact that government is inefficient, you find thousands of hours being wasted every day standing in line in government offices with poor customer service, just stretching on and eating up productive time. The kind of changes the UIC is going to bring in will no doubt immediately impact all of these areas. So a better public transportation system that is based on a scheduled, timed system, not the run jostle one you have now. You're going to have buses and taxis that are scheduled. You're going to have an app that allows you to be able to make your decisions about when you want to go based on the cycle time that is there. So you can plan your life better. You can set your life based on when the bus is going to come, and it's going to come, on that time. So right now it's very hard to do business in Jamaica. And because of how difficult it is to do business, that feeds into a low productivity environment, which in the end only drives up costs and drives down our productivity and makes us not very competitive in the world at large. So the long and short of it is, this principle of Kwanzaa, the day 5 principle of productivity, is very, very critical. The actual word that is used in Kwanzaa is purpose, but I want us to make this our purpose. I want us to make lifting our productivity a key performance indicator for us, a key purpose driver for us as a government, as a people, so that we can get to the level that we should be at. It's a shame that Jamaica has a productivity level that is not even a quarter, not even 10% of where Singapore is. There's no reason why we should not be at least on par with Singapore. But worst come to worst, we could at least be 50% then, or 75%. Instead, we're less than 10% of Singapore's productivity level. Singapore, a colony, a former colony, has been able to surpass their own colonizer. They've surpassed Britain on every metric. Britain, that colonized, they are now richer than Britain on every single metric. They're better than the US, better than Canada, and they are a small country, 1/15 the size of Jamaica. I think we can do better. I'm sure we can do much better than that. What do you think? I'm sure we can do better. So as we embrace Kwanzaa this year, let us make productivity our mission. Yeah. So we already identified the key thing that's going to drive us: unity, to ensure we achieve our individual liberty. We're going to take personal responsibility to do our part in rescuing Jamaica from the hands of these two political parties. We are going to embrace a free and fair market economy, because we now know and understand that that is a key to our success, and not be fooled by all kind of other nice things that are said about all kind of other, methods, which we know don't work. The only method that brings out the best in people economically is a free and fair market economy. And you cannot have a successful, free and fair market economy without a well-educated and highly productive people. You can't be highly productive if you're not well-educated. And by well-educated, I don't mean like having a PhD. There are different levels. Some people will be educated to the level of being a solid tradesperson. Some a solid diploma person, or undergraduate degree, or master's, or PhD. But the bottom line is, your education system must produce a level of competency that allows you to be a highly productive person. At this point, I want to now pause and take any questions you might have. I have a few minutes left. Let's do that now, and I'll take your questions. Please. So any questions you have that you want me to touch on before I go tonight? Remember, tomorrow, I'm not going to be here tomorrow. We're going to be doing our seminar, our financial seminar tomorrow. So this is what we're going to be doing tomorrow. If you'd like to attend, please make sure you go to our website at uicjamaica.com and purchase your ticket. Purchase your ticket as soon as possible. Well, tonight is the last night. If you purchase tomorrow, it goes from 25 to 30. The telephone number 2930812. If you have a problem, just WhatsApp that number so you can get some guidance on how to register for the program tomorrow. So any questions? Let me see. Do we have any questions? Any questions? Comments? Any good comments that we want to read out? So Jevon Watkins says Jamaica has potential to be like Singapore. America and South America is interested for shipping, etc. We're right in between. Yeah, the Jamaica is perfectly situated. We have a Singapore had an advantage in terms of where it's located, and we also had a similar advantages as to where we're located. They have used their location optimally. We have failed to use our location optimally. Good night, Mr. Myrie. Good to see you on. Any other comments or questions? This minister should know the world eyes are on his government. This PM need to know he first need to clean his house by taking his. All right. Yep. Got it. Norman Smith says productivity of the craft vendor in Jamaica. Will that be a focus of the UIC? Well, Norman, the productivity in general. So we're looking at productivity across the board, meaning what is productivity? Productivity is us being able to produce goods and services that we need and that the rest of the world needs in ample supply. So for example, if we were very productive in agriculture, we'd be importing less in agriculture and exporting more if we were very productive. As it is now, we're not even feeding ourselves, which we have all the capacity. We have enough land, we have more than enough land to feed ourselves, far more than enough land to feed ourselves, but we're not productive enough to be able to feed ourselves. Nor are we productive enough to be able to supply the rest of the world with agricultural produce at the levels that we should be doing. So any area at all, whether it's craft or it's music or it's sports or it's food or it's technology, the aim is for us to be better at what we're doing it faster, doing it with better quality, and being able to move those products around the world as quickly as possible. Next, Javon Watkins says, what's this? How do we get our people to understand that our future is in our hands and we have to be the ones that make that happen? Sean Campbell, good question. I mean, it's the work for all of us. We have to get the word out to the rest of Jamaica because, it's an uphill battle we're fighting. The powers that be do not want what the UIC has to offer. That's a given. They don't want that. So now it means we here have to join hands together and get the word out and get people in. I believe that at least 60% or more of Jamaica wants what the UIC has to offer, but we have not been able to reach them yet. I see somebody said in the comment area earlier on that the UIC needs to go door to door. And that would be beautiful for us to be able to go door to door. So I'm asking you to help us to do that. Help us to go door to door. For that, we need 1,000 persons donating $25 a month on average, US. Next question or comment. Do you promise to investigate and prosecute those who are responsible for the misuse of public fund? Charity, how do we say that? I can't pronounce that word. It's tricks free. We that's a part of our manifesto. So it's clearly stated in our manifesto that we are going to be prosecuting all politicians who are found to be in any way, shape, or form involved in any serious corruption activities at all, past and present. Now, that comment is in line with what O'Neill C is saying here. He says you need to start making comments that get the UIC on primetime news. So O'Neill, what should I say? Give me an example of what I should say. Because I'm not going to be ridiculous. I'm not going to make ridiculous statements so that we get on the news, because the news would be very happy to carry those, which would undermine the confidence that people might have in the UIC. So we can't just make outlandish remarks and careless statements to grab a headline, but undermine our credibility. So, for example, the statement on the screen here says we're going to investigate and prosecute politicians who are engaged in fraud. That's a bold enough statement for the news to carry, but they're not carrying it. They're not going to carry it. They hardly carry anything from the UIC, no matter what the policy is. We have bold policies, and they have not been carrying those policies. Next comment. Is it true Jamaica will be top exporters for bamboo? I have no idea, Javon, if Jamaica is going to be top exporter of bamboo. By now, you should know that Jamaica is a country of announcements. We're always on the, what do you call it now? We're always poised for growth. For the last, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Romans, for the last 50 years, 60 years, we've always heard announcements coming out of our politicians. We're always going to do something great. We're always poised for growth. We're always going to take off in this area or take off in that area or take off in this area. hear about the transshipment hub that's coming to Jamaica. There's always a grand announcement. So I can't tell you if we're going to be a top exporter or not. What I can tell you is that the current design of our governance, the current system that we have to operate in, does not make it easy for any innovative Jamaican to set up and operate very successful businesses without playing the political game with our politicians, which makes their business now less competitive. Because the cost of corruption, the cost of security, the cost of energy is very, very high, and the cost of employing people is very high, meaning the cost of employing people who are not equipped to do the work properly, and you have to train them, significantly train them, and then suffer all kind of problems in between. So we have so many challenges that unless we do a real transformation of our government, like the UIC proposes, we're holding back thousands of entrepreneurs who might be able to do great things. Next person. Ennis says, I'm convinced that Jamaica has the potential to be much more productive, but it needs a government with vision followed by actions to make it up. Correct, Ennis. It needs what happened is the two parties that we have, they're so compromised, right? They can never do what is right because they're too compromised. So as long as the Jamaican people are waiting for these two to finally get it together, it's not going to happen because they're just too compromised. They cannot change from what they are. Next. That's right, Mr. Romans. They just want to score political points. What does the webinar, what time does the webinar begin tomorrow? Oh, the webinar starts tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Oh, it's not showing there. Yeah, 6:30 p.m. It goes from 6:30 to 9 p.m. So we have refreshment at 7 for those who are on the ground. We'll be at the church, but it runs from 6:30 to 9 p.m. and we'll cover quite a bit. All right, so Joseph Richardson says, good evening, Mr. Patterson. I know the people of Jamaica are slow waking up after 78 years of the parties. Keeping the dumb down, it will take time. Yes, it will take time, Joseph Richardson, but it takes longer. The longer, for example, at the early part of this presentation, you would have seen a discourse happening about Michael Manley versus Siaga. I am so tired of those discourses. I can't wait for us to stop talking about them in that way. You know, and you're having, because each side has a strong argument in their mind about how good or how bad the other one is. So every JLP feels Manley was a demon, and every PNP feels Siaga was a demon. So it's time for us to just put those conversations aside. Stop allowing it, because what it does, when we feast on those conversations, it just draws us right back into the very system that they want us to be in. They love it when we're fighting about whether Manley or Siaga, was the better one and whatever it is. That doesn't get us anywhere, guys. It doesn't get us anywhere more than to hate each other and to fight each other. I want us to move beyond Manley and Siaga now, beyond PNP and JLP. We have to mention them because they're the two parties, but we need to focus on, when you add it all up, the two of them is part of a system that operates like a Sam fireman. It's a system which is used to get us to fight each other. Whether the leader of either of them at any point in time sounded nice or did nice things or so on, the whole structure, the whole concoction, the whole idea is to get us to be divided And being divided, we are then led down the path of hating each other, right? And as we hate each other, we take our eye off the ball and we allow one more time for one or the other of them to occupy the seat and to continue on in the vein that we have been continuing. So we have to stay focused on the big picture. And the big picture is whether you once liked this leader or that leader or this party or that party, remember that both of them were a part of the colonial construct designed to destroy Marcus Garvey, destroy true unity, destroy our liberty, destroy our economy, and keep us in poverty so that those in authority and those who control them can continue to milk. Sorry about that. So now I know my time is up, eh? So we're going to close off now. Joseph Richardson, you're correct. When the people realize it's not about jailbird PNP, it's about our country, then game over. That note, a very positive note, very thoughtful note. So hopefully the people realize, and I know they will. It's a matter of how fast can we, all of us here, not just me, right? How fast can we get it done? There's an element of politics, you see, which can be sensational, and so we get carried away with the sensational part, and so we love to hear fiery speeches and sensational arguments. And I am encouraging us that we need to buckle down and get the basics done. And here's the basics. If we don't get 1,000 donors giving $25 a month minimum, we can't get the work done that you want to see us do. It's that simple. I wish there was a magic wand I could wave and tell you that everything is okay, we will go and do door to door, we'll get everything done. No, it's not that simple. We all of us have to put in the work. So your work may simply be to go and get 10 more persons to join you in giving $25 a month. Right? So if all of us do a piece of the work and get to our numbers so we can get stuff done, you know, I want to be able to be traveling across the country, the length and breadth of the country, meeting in town hall meetings across all of the community. But it can't happen without gas. It can't happen without support staff. It can't happen without security. It can't happen without a lot of things that has to go into making those things happen. And so I want us to open our eyes and open our understanding and realize what we're up against. And I want to thank all of you, especially you, Mr. Romans. I want to thank all of you who have been working so hard to help us to get to that place. I really want to thank all of you for that. And so let us unite around our mission. Let us cut the umbilical cord that we had to whichever of those two parties or their leaders, and let us focus on the fact. The fact is, they have had 78 years to get it done. 78 years. Come 2023, we're now 79 years. And by the time the next election is called in 2024, it will be 80 years. And if they could not get it done in 75, 78, 79, 80 years, they will not get it done again. Little Singapore, little in physical size, but twice our size in population, with less than 10% of the resources that we have. They have gotten it done in 1 generation. They took 25 years to get to where we have not gotten to in 78 years. So I am depending on you. I'm imploring you to really think about that carefully. Let that sink in. They did in 25 years that we have not been able to do in 78 years. And it's not because our people are not capable. It's because our leaders have misled us. Our leaders have led us astray. They have joined hands with the colonial masters to continue the rape of our nation, to continue to rob us of our labor and our land. And so the time has come for us to let that sink in fully. Let that sink in fully. And say, come on, man. We have to double our effort. Let us not get settled into the entertainment mode of politics. I saw a video, forgive me, Naika. I saw a video yesterday where somebody was talking about the UIC, me and Mark Golden and so on and so forth and things. I know that is a lot of entertainment value, and it's lovely to watch, and we can share those videos, and nothing is wrong with that. That's fine. But please do not get carried away with the entertainment factor. And also, please read between the lines. Don't take these things at face value. Read between the lines. Right? Our politics is filled with cunning and intrigue and deception. So I want you to read between the lines of all of these things. If a person knows that those two parties have done and is doing and will do, based on their history, damage to Jamaica, it's time for you to just cut the cord and don't play around. Let us not play around and infatuate or show any kind of favoritism or likeness or any form of attachment to those two parties. Let us sever the umbilical cord completely. If you stand with the UIC, stand with the UIC. Why am I saying this? We cannot afford to placate. We cannot afford to leave any shred of encouragement to anybody to lend their support to one or the other of the two colonial parties. You've seen me on other interviews where they try to trap me or they try to get me to express a preference to one or the other, to say which one I would favor, which one I would work with. I will not work with any one of them if it is in any way compromise the values of the UIC. So I'm not here to give any form of indication, and I don't want us to get into that, any form of indication that, oh, well, you know, maybe this one or maybe that one. No, they have proven themselves incapable and unworthy of leading this country. They are incapable and unworthy of leading this country any further. And I know that the opposition is just sitting there waiting for its time because it knows that the UIC is not yet at the place with the kind of funding that we need to be able to do what you all want to see us doing. You all want to see ads on television. You all want to see billboards across the country. You all want to see a large group of persons clad in UIC shirts, moving through the country and engaging the people. I want to see that too. But I can't make it happen by miracle. We can't make it happen by miracle. It's not going to be miraculously done. It is going to be done because you and I, all the way, rise up and make it happen. I have persons calling me from all across the world expressing support, but then that's it. Many are not yet at the place where they have given any financial support to the organization. We have to understand, that there's no way to build the UIC without funding. There's no miracle. We cannot expect that there's any one of us who, I've already, stretched myself as thin as I can, my own personal research, as thin as I can. So, but there's no other way. We cannot do this without all of us. We have 4 million people in the diaspora. We have 2 million persons on the voters list here in Jamaica. There are 2 million persons here on the voters list. By now, at least 100,000 knows the UIC. In fact, I'm sure more than 500,000 persons in Jamaica now knows about the UIC. But I know the argument in their mind is, I can't bother, or them a wait for see. Them a wait for see. Let me see how them going to do. And then you have those in the diaspora, 4 million in the diaspora, and I'm sure at least 1 million in the diaspora knows about the UIC, but they're watching as well. Everybody's watching. Let me watch and see what's. I hope him win, I hope the UIC win. I hope them win. We need a change. And they're watching. Everybody's watching and waiting. And all that's going to happen while you're watching and waiting is that the next election come and one of the two win again, and that's 5 more years. So my friends, we can't keep sitting and watching and hoping that the UIC cannot win unless you do something about it. We can't win unless you do something about it. I'm trying to read, sorry Naika, I'm trying to read something here. Sean Campbell, I'm not saying that fire speeches are not important. I'm saying that that's not enough. We can't just have fire speeches night after night after night, day after day. We have to put in some work. And a part of that work requires, a big part of that work requires funding. I have made it very clear to us, I've laid it out very clear. You all see how the political system in Jamaica works. I've explained it to you many times before. You all see how it works. What do you have? You have the very wealthy PSOJ fully aware of what is going on. You watched the video tonight where you see members of the PSOJ are able to articulate the problem. They're able to talk, and they're not talking about the political side, and they talk about just the impact of the bad governance and say this isn't working and that isn't working and this isn't working. And what needs to happen is this and what needs to happen is that. So they know. So they're pretty much in line. They know what needs to happen. But they are prepared to continue to fund these two parties, and then even the politicians now complain about their own mistakes or their own failings, not even mistakes. They will come on television and they will tell you what the problem is. They'll tell you, gangs are doing this, students are doing that, teachers are doing this, schools are failing here. They'll tell you the problems over as if they didn't create it. And then we, the people, will go and vote. Oh gosh. So we the people, less of us are voting, but it's still, if only 10% of us vote and 90% don't vote, one of those two parties still win, if they vote for them. So not voting isn't going to solve the problem. Yeah. Joseph Richardson says, do I think some sort of concert should help? Honestly, I don't know. I can't. We have an advertising committee that meets and look into these matters. I can't tell you exactly what will work. We've now tried a number of things. We've called for volunteers. We've called for donors. I've been on at least two all island tours. I've had countless meetings with candidates and stuff in different communities. I've traveled all over the country, racked up a whole heap of mileage on my vehicle. The other day when we had the function in Clarendon there, the chairman carrying back home people drop into a massive pothole and rip out various stuff under his vehicle. He has to find over $100,000 to pay for that. These are the things. I went up into one community. By the time I come out, my front end is gone. I would travel to St. Thomas. That took a heavy beating on all of our vehicles, all of us who went out there. So these things are real, folks. It's a real cost. And that's why the vast majority of Jamaicans don't get involved. They can't even afford it. They can't afford to get involved in any serious way. They can. I know they can afford to give $250 a week. They just decide not to. So some people decide not to give $250 a week because they have no confidence. They don't feel like Jamaica can be rescued. They don't feel like there is any hope. So they just when it happened, it happened. So when the UIC figures it out and win, then we'll pay attention. So if tomorrow, for example, somebody like Elon Musk were to come and give the UIC $10 million US, and we can now put on a show so we can really look like we're a political party and we can be out there on the road and doing stuff because our bills are covered, right? We're not worried about how food is going to be on the table, so we can be out there. We can be all over the island. But if you can't do that, if you don't have the 10 million, for example, just using as an example number, if you can't do that, then, you guys would love to see me out there going up and down, but how am I going to do it? When you see a blogger talking or a vlogger on talking, that vlogger is investing a lot of his time and energy in sitting and coming to you and talking to you and stuff. If that vlogger had to do that and also go and do door-to-door activities and make the rounds, and give up long time, not because he wants to give up, but because he would be broke. Every time that I'm doing something for the UIC means I am not earning for my family, right? And that's not just me, anybody. When our photographer, Misha, travels with us to wherever to take photographs and do videos so that we can have them and to show, she's giving up work. She's leaving work to go and do that, right? And she's an entrepreneur, so her bills are paid based on her going to deliver for a customer and then getting paid. So when we take her and go to Timbuktu and she can't serve her customers, she has no money to put food on the table for her child. These are real people. These are real issues, and I want us to understand these and not sit there and just think, Mr. Patterson, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to go do some more here and there. Yes, I want to do it, but how do I do it? You think Mark and Andrew are suffering the kind of financial hardships we in the UIC have to suffer to do what they're doing? When Andrew goes across the country and go cut ribbons and do this, who's paying for it? You and me, the taxpayers. He's drinking our money. Every trip he makes abroad, every meeting he goes to, when he was standing up and talking at their conference, he's paid. He's fully covered. He's not worried about his next meal, how he's going to pay his car insurance, how he's going to pay his mortgage, how he's going to pay his children's school fees. He's fully covered. Mark Golden is fully covered. All of them have a government salary, and on top of that are getting money from the PSOJ to continue to fool us. Plus, they have gotten a lot of money out of politics and are invested in many things. Some own buses, some own trucks, some own gas stations, some own grocery stores, some have properties offshore, some have investments offshore. They're fully covered. So when you're looking at the UIC and asking us to do many things which we need to do, we must do, please understand, it's not that we don't want to do it. We just can't do it. We don't have the money to do it. We just had a banquet the other day. I think somebody asked me how it went. We did very well. We sold, I think, Naika, how much did we sell in terms of tickets? I think about 178 tickets. And that's very well in our small sense, in 172, she says. That's small, that's very well in our context because you can call us a very small operation, right? So 172, I think we make somewhere in the region of gross revenue, somewhere under $1 million, right? Which is nothing, that's a drop in the bucket. But we had to work hard for it. It didn't come easily. We had persons like Dr. Romans, who I keep calling him Dr. Romans, and Mr. Romans, and Mr. West, and Naika, and Sonia, and Carlene, and Christine, and Mrs. Patterson, and everybody working hard to sell just a few tickets. How much hours? If you were to add up the man hours it took to sell those tickets, it almost means you lose money in terms of the cost of those labor hours. I'm very pragmatic people. I don't like to play games. I don't like to fool people up. I don't like to give you pie in the sky, ideas, and if you think everything is perfect and hunky-dory, and then don't deliver. I want you to know that we want to deliver, but we can't deliver unless we have the funding to do it. Right now in our bank account, we have approximately, I think, about 5,000 or so US dollars equivalency, $5,000 or so we have in our account, which is better than we have had in many other times. That's the balance we have there right now. That's nothing. If an election is called tomorrow, when I said nothing, don't get me wrong, I am so appreciative, so very appreciative for those of you who have given us better than zero, because 6,000 US dollars in a bank account is better than zero. But that's all we have. My little brain, while I'm doing all the other stuff, I have to figure out how do we spend that $6,000 efficiently and effectively? How am I going to do this to make sure every dollar counts? And I have to do this every single solitary month. I have to look at what is the best thing for us to spend your money on that's going to bring us closer to the goal. That's not a lot of money, so you can't just splurge. You can't just do whatever. You can't just, you buy 2 ads, it's done. You print 2 pieces of material, it's done. You organize 1 meeting, it's done. You understand? So it's not, we need to understand what we're doing here. And I'm trying hard to convey this to you without seeming desperate or without being, anything less than professional. But I need my people to understand. We have a great moment here in time, a great opportunity here right before us, where we can once and for all take back our country, take control of our future, and transform Jamaica. I've put a lot of energy and time into building this out for us, and our team have been working very hard to put all the pieces in place for us to deliver on this. It's a lot of work. When you think of the amount of time it takes to be drafting a new constitution, nobody's paying us to do this. We don't have any salary. We don't have any. When the other guys, when the ones who gave us the bad system we have, when they were writing the new constitution, they were all being paid. They were all eating the taxpayers' money, sitting around the table, being lauded and praised and bought by their colonial counterparts, who really were the ones who wrote the Constitution and gave it to them. They weren't struggling and suffering the way we are, where we are balancing our family life, balancing our personal financing, and trying to make time every day to contribute to writing policies, writing laws, writing a constitution, designing a solution. They didn't have to suffer any of that. We're doing that without any compensation at all. I hope I haven't said too much, but that's just me, folks. I am going to be as plain as open as a book, because what we're doing is too important for us to pretend. It's too significant for us to just pretend as if things are okay. We need to face the brutal facts, the harsh reality, the honest truth about what's at stake here and what we need to do to make it happen. And we need 1,000 donors right now, contributing $25 or more per month right now, for us to be able to effectively compete in the coming elections. The longer we take for that to happen is the more unprepared we are when the time comes. And they're watching us. Every move I make, the competition is watching us. They're watching us. So they know everything. They know exactly what our strengths and weaknesses are. Some people said I should be more strategic. How much more strategic should I be? How much more, what else will I do to be, what's the strategy? Go behind closed door and go and talk with the PSOJ and get some money from them and come and trick you? And that's the strategy, right? If we don't appeal to you publicly, there's no way to do it privately, because privately means we go get some money from a few people who then realize that they have us by the neck. And then all we can do is put up a facade and trick you, get you to elect us on the basis that you're electing change. And then when we get in, we turn out to be no change at all. And now you have 3 of the same thing instead of 2. Right now we have this year 192 donors. So we need 808 more. So let's get those 808 more persons giving $25 or more US equivalent. All of us need to donate, and we must tell that to all of our family and friends everywhere. Everybody need to donate. Come with your $5, come with your $10, come with your $20, come with your $50, come with your $100, come with your $1,000. There's one lady in Canada. She always waits for a little bit, maybe a month or 2 or 3, and then she sends 1,000 Canadian dollars. There's another fellow. He sends every week. So whatever his earnings is, he takes out a piece. So it might be a $25 this week, a $50 next week, a $10 the following week, and that's how he does it. That's what works for him. Another person, he aggregates. He gets a few friends, and he collects from all of his friends, and then he sends a $200 or $100 or whatever, $300. But all of us need to get involved, my people. We can do this, and we must do this. This is, in the words of some people, our last hope. I strongly believe this is our last hope as well. So thank you all for listening. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any more questions or concerns, or the treasurer, and let us work together to make this happen. Thanks again. One Jamaica, stronger together. Have a good night. And those of you who are coming to the seminar tomorrow, 6:30, see you then. Otherwise, New Year's Day. Looking forward. Take care. All the best. Thank you, O'Neill. Appreciate that very much.